This week is Parshas Vayakel, and in a regular non-leap year, Vayakel Perkudei are always connected. In a leap year, Vayakel and Perkudei are split. But Vayakel and Perkudei are challenging parshias because they just seem to be repetitive. Because back in Parshas Truma and Tzava, we have the instructions as to how to build the Mishkan, how to manufacture the clothing for the Kehanim. And in Vayakel Perkudei, it's just repeated. The Torah tells us how it actually was made. And there really are no significant differences. So it's just pure repetition. But if you read between the lines, there are some interesting things that emerge. And let me just mention one of them. If you go to Parshas Perkudei, where the Torah describes how the various Bigdei Kahuna were manufactured, we find that for each of the begadim, the Torah tells us explicitly that it was made ka'asher tziva Hashem es Moshe, just as God commanded Moshe. So if you look in Perek Lamed Tes, if you have this stone chumash, page 532, so in the end of verse Aleph, it says, Vayasu es bigdei HaKodesh asher la'Aaron, they made the holy garments for Aaron, ka'asher tziva Hashem es Moshe, as God commanded Moshe. And then in verse Beis through verse Hey, so the ephod, one of the 8 begadim, is made, and it says there, it was made ka'asher tziva Hashem es Moshe. And then in the next verse Vav and Zayin, it speaks about one part of the ephod, the onyx stones that were on the shoulder pieces. And again it says ka'asher tziva Hashem es Moshe, that they were manufactured as God commanded Moshe. And then we have a long description starting in verse Ches about the choshen, the breastplate, and that also ends in verse 21, ka'asher tziva Hashem es Moshe, as God commanded Moshe. And then we turn to the Me'il, which is discussed beginning in verse 22 and ending in verse 26. And then again it says ka'asher tziva Hashem es Moshe. And then it talks about the ksainas, the robe, starting in verse 27 through verse 29, and it ends ka'asher tziva Hashem es Moshe. And then it talks about the tzitz, the golden plate that was on the Kohen's forehead, and there too it says ka'asher tziva Hashem es Moshe. So again, this is repeated again and again and again and again and again. Interestingly, in Parshas Vayakel, when it talks about the manufacture of the components of the Mishkan, it doesn't say this. The Torah never says on each thing that it was made ka'asher tziva Hashem es Moshe. And the Ramban makes this observation, that it seems very strange that when it comes to the Bigdei Kahuna, the royal legal vestments of the priests, it's important that at every point of the story it says ka'asher tziva Hashem es Moshe. When it comes to the components of the Mishkan, this isn't mentioned. And the Ramban says that it's true. It's true that the Torah doesn't make a point of this when it comes to the components of the Mishkan, but the Torah in its summary does. If you turn ahead to chapter Lamed Tes, chapter 39, verse 33, it says that they brought all the parts of the Mishkan to Moshe Rabbeinu, and it says in verse 42, Mem Beis, K'chol asher tziva Hashem es Moshe, all the things that God commanded Moshe, Kein asu b'nei Yisrael, so the b'nei Yisrael did, es kol ha'avoda. So the Ramban points out that although at each step the Torah doesn't make this point, but in the summary it makes the point. But the Netziv points out that it's not really the exact same thing. It's not the exact same thing. And I've given a mashal to illustrate the point. Imagine the following. Imagine you have a newlywed chassan. Now the newlywed chassan tells his wife, his newlywed wife, I'd like you to make a Shabbos meal just like my mother makes. So the Kala asks her chassan, so tell me, what does your mother make for Shabbos? She says, well, she makes challah, and she makes gefilte fish, and she makes chicken soup with knedlach, and she makes chicken, and she makes kugel, and she makes dessert. So the Kala says, okay, I'm going to make exactly what your mother makes. So she bakes challah, and she makes gefilte fish, and she makes soup, and she makes knedlach, and she makes the chicken, and she makes the kugel, and so on and so forth. And the chassan says, that first Friday night, you made everything that my mother makes, but it isn't like my mother makes. You make the same thing, but it's not like my mother. Now here too, if this pasuk doesn't say that everything they made was kasher, tziva, Shemes, Moshe. It says that all the things that God commanded, they made. Now, if you make a list of the components, they made everything. They didn't omit anything. They didn't forget anything. They didn't overlook anything. But did they make it exactly as God said? Maybe it wasn't exactly as God commanded. But they made the krushim, they made the amudim, they made the yerios, they made the curtains, the boards. But who says it was exactly as Hashem made? This verse doesn't imply that. But it's really the next verse. If you look at the very next verse, verse 43, there it says, Vayar Moshe es kol ha-malacha. That Moshe saw all the malacha. V'hinei asu osa kasher tziva Hashem. Kein asu. They made it just as Hashem commanded. So really, the two verses, verse 42 and verse 43, are making two different points. Verse 42 makes the point that when they brought all the components to Moshe, Moshe saw that they had made all the parts. All the things that God commanded Moshe, Kain asu b'nei Yisrael, so the b'nei Yisrael made. In other words, if the Mishkan is comprised of several hundred parts, Moshe Rabbeinu was able to detect that all the parts were made. Nothing was omitted. But then it required more careful examination. Then it says, Vayar Moshe es kol ha-malacha. He looked at all the malach, he examined it carefully, and he determined not just that they made all the parts, but they made it exactly as Hashem commanded Moshe. But again, so the Ramban is correct that the Torah in summation does tell us this regarding the components of the Mishkan, but it still is intriguing. Why is it with regards to the Big Day Kahuna does the Torah make this point again and again and again and again? And with regards to the components of the Mishkan, the Torah doesn't tell us this at every juncture. It's only in the end, in summation, the Torah tells us this.
Where did B'tzalel fit into this with respect to the Mishkan?
B'tzalel was the overseer of the actual work.
So Moshe told him?
Moshe told him, and he was the
but Hashem gave him the ability to do it.
That's right. So, the answer to this question has two parts. First, we have to understand a literary technique which the Chumash uses from time to time. And then we have to have a little bit of background of the story that the Medrash gives us. Now, the literary technique is like this. The Torah, as any good writer, will not reveal information in advance that emerges from the unfolding of the story. In other words, if something is going to be revealed in the story, so the omniscient narrator will not tell us this information in advance. He will let the information emerge through the unfolding of the story. That makes perfect sense. Now let me give you a trivial example of this. If you go back to Parshas Vo'era, and Hashem reveals himself to Moshe Rabbeinu, and what does he say to Moshe Rabbeinu? Ani Hashem. I am Hashem. Now, this is the information that God is revealing to Moshe Rabbeinu. He is revealing to Moshe Rabbeinu that Ribono Shel Olam is named Hashem. Now, of course, what that means is that a divine name isn't just a name. It isn't just by convention he's called that. Ribono Shel Olam's names reflect something about his metzius, about his reality. If he has a name, that means that he possesses the qualities that are symbolized by that name. Now, what would the narrator say? Hashem told Moshe, I am Hashem. That would be very strange. Vayomer Hashem, Ani Hashem. Would anyone say something like that? Once the narrator says that Vayomer Hashem, Hashem said, then there's not much impact in Hashem's words, because the narrator already revealed this tidbit that Hashem is coming to reveal to Moshe. So the Torah doesn't put it that way. The Torah says, Vayomer Elokim, the Elokim said, Ani Hashem. Now Elokim is a generic term for a deity. That's why we can speak of Elohim Acherim. We can speak of foreign Elohims, because it's a generic name for a deity. When it refers to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, it's a holy name. But it can refer to Avodah Zarah too. So the generic deity appeared to Moshe Rabbeinu and explained that Ani Hashem, that I possess the qualities that are conveyed in the name Hashem. And that's why it has to be that way. In other words, they couldn't say Vayomer Hashem Ani Hashem. It has to be Vayomer Elokim Ani Hashem. And really, once you understand this, and you see that the problems that Rashi deals with fall away. Rashi is troubled about the use of Elokim in that verse. The Rashi brings a drush that Elokim implies Midas Adin, and HaKadosh Baruch Hu was angry at Moshe Rabbeinu because in the end of the previous parsha, Moshe questioned God's judgment. So Vayomer Elokim, Diber Ito Koshos, God spoke to him harshly. That's why he says Elokim. But the truth is that the simple pshat is that since the point of information that God is coming to convey is that I am Hashem, so in the narration it can't say Vayomer Hashem Ani Hashem, and it has to say Vayomer Elokim Ani Hashem. Now here it's a little more complex. So let's hear what the Medrash Tanchuma tells us. It tells us the following story. The command to put the Mishkan together was given by Moshe Rabbeinu to the Jewish people on the day after Yom Kippur. Because we know that Moshe Rabbeinu had gone up to Har Sinai for the third time on Rosh Chodesh Elul. He was there for 40 days. He received the second set of luchas on Yom Kippur, and he came down, and the day after Yom Kippur there was an assembly at which he gave the command to build the Mishkan. How long did it take? How long did the work take? So the Medrash says it really took a couple of months. The rest of Tishrei, Cheshvan, and Kislev, by the end of Kislev it was finished. There is a very, very interesting psikta, that the psikta tells us exactly when it was finished. That it was finished on the 25th day of Kislev. That was the exact day it was finished. And the Mishkan really should have been put up then.
What's the source for that?
There's a psikta. It's a medrash. It says it was finished on the 25th day of Kislev, and the psikta says that really the Mishkan should have been assembled, and God pushed it off till Nisan for reasons we'll see in a moment, and therefore it was paid back by the Hanukkah story. That was the dedication of the Beis Mikdash of Hanukkah. But the Medrash Tanchuma doesn't go into that detail, but it says basically that it was finished by the end of Kislev. When was the Mishkan put together? This is when the components, the various parts were finished. When was it put up? It was put up Rosh Chodesh Nisan. That means that it was disassembled for the months of Teves, Shvat, and Adar. For 3 months, the Mishkan sat disassembled. And only Rosh Chodesh Nisan, that's when the Mishkan was put up. So this is very odd. Yeah?
It had the pieces
But
lined.
before, isn't there a medrash that before Rosh Chodesh Nisan, it was put up and taken down?
For 7 days.
Right.
So let it be the 23rd of Adar, okay? But it's still a question. In other words, for almost 3 months, it sat in storage.
Were they in one
Disassembled.
location during that time?
Pardon?
Were they in one location at that time, or were they traveling?
They're still in one location. They hadn't left yet from Har Sinai.
Right.
Right? They only left Har Sinai the 20th of Iyar
Right.
after they put up the Mishkan. So they were really in one encampment, and it was disassembled. So there's a lot of discussion in the Medrash about this. That people were making fun, and there was a lot of pressure, and like, why are we waiting? So the Medrash Tanchuma says that the people on their own decided to put the Mishkan up. So what are we waiting for? We have all the parts. Let's put it together. And they tried to put it together, and they could not put it together. It did not stand. The parts didn't stand. Couldn't put it together. So the people began to suspect that maybe the work wasn't done properly. So they decided to bring it to Moshe Rabbeinu that he should inspect it. And that is the meaning of this long parsha, Perek Lamed Tes, Pasuk Lamed Gimel. It says, Vayaviu es ha-mishkan al Moshe. They brought the Mishkan to Moshe, and it lists all the parts. It lists all the parts. And it's quite a long description, because there were many components of the Mishkan. But the Medrash Tanchuma says that's the meaning behind this parsha. Meaning they brought it to Moshe after their failure to put it together themselves. They tried to put it together themselves. It didn't stand. So they brought the pieces to Moshe for Moshe to inspect. So now, if you are told this piece of information, right, that we had all the parts, we tried to put it together, it didn't stand. So what's the first thing you suspect? That maybe something is missing, right? Maybe there's a missing part, which is the key holding everything together, and they left it out. So they brought it to Moshe Rabbeinu, and first Moshe Rabbeinu determined, no. He said, that's Pasuk Mem Aleph, that K'chayil asher tziva Hashem es Moshe kein asu b'nei Yisrael v'schol ha'malacha. All the things that God commanded Moshe to make, they made. There's nothing missing. No missing parts. Okay, so we've eliminated the first possibility. Now there's another possibility. Well, maybe. Okay, they made all the parts, but maybe they didn't make it exactly as they were supposed to. Maybe there's a rough edge. You know, when you manufacture parts that have to fit together, there's a certain tolerance. It can't be too much bigger, too much smaller. So that requires more careful examination. To determine that there's no missing parts, that's fairly easy. But now to determine that each part was made as it was meant to be made, that's much harder. So it says, Vayar Moshe es kol hamalacha. He saw the work, meaning he inspected it very, very carefully. V'hinei, and behold, Osu osa kasher tziva Hashem kein osu. That exactly as God commanded, so they made it. In other words, Moshe determined that there was nothing wrong. All the pieces were perfectly made. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, the Medrash revealed himself to Moshe Rabbeinu and said, don't think that the reason it didn't stand is because there was something wrong. The reason it didn't stand is because I wanted that it should be delayed until the month of Nisan. Because Nisan is the month that Yitzchak Avinu was born. Nisan is the month that Yitzchak Avinu was born, and I wanted that the putting up of the Mishkan should be postponed until the month of Nisan. Now I'll just mention that the mashma'us of the Medrash is that Yitzchak was the only one of the others born in the month of Nisan. This is really a machlokes tanoim, Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua Maseches Rosh Hashanah. Right? There's one man that Rabbi Eliezer holds that way, that Avraham and Yaakov were born in Tishrei, only Yitzchak was born in Nisan. There's another opinion that all three of the others were born in Nisan. The Medrash here seems to be more like the opinion that it was only Yitzchak was born in Nisan. So that's why God delayed the erection of the Mishkan until Nisan. He wanted it to be in the month that Yitzchak Avinu was born. Now we're going to talk about that. Why was that so important? What is the connection of Yitzchak Avinu to the Mishkan? We'll see in a moment. But now we understand the story. You see, by the Big Day Kahuna, the Torah could say at every point, it was Kasher Tziva Shemes Moshe, Kasher Tziva Shemes Moshe, Kasher Tziva Shemes Moshe. But back in PARSHA's Vayakhel, when it came to the building of the Mishkan, the Torah couldn't tell me at every juncture it was Kasher Tziva Shemes Moshe. Because that is really the drama of the unfolding story. The story is they tried to build the Mishkan and it didn't stand. They had to bring it to Moshe for inspection. Moshe determined that it was Kasher Tziva Shemes Moshe. So the narrator isn't going to give me that information in advance. The narrator isn't going to tell me in advance it was Kasher Tziva Shemes Moshe. That's letting the cat out of the bag. That's giving you information which was not yet known as the story is unfolding. So therefore, when it came to the manufacture of the parts of the Mishkan, the Torah never tells me this. Why? Because that is the issue of the story. Right? They made the parts. It wasn't ascertained yet whether it was exactly Kasher Tziva Shemes Moshe. It's only that when they tried to put it up and it didn't stand, they brought it to Moshe for inspection, and then Moshe saw that it was Kasher Tziva Shemes Moshe, and then Hashem reveals to him the very next pasuk, do it in Rosh Chodesh Nisan. So it's a literary question. When it comes to the Big Day Kahuna, there's no issue there. Right? And therefore, right at the outset, the Torah can tell me for every component it was Kasher Tziva Shemes Moshe, not for the parts of the Mishkan, because that really is the drama of the story. That they tried to put it up, they failed. It had to be brought to Moshe for inspection. Moshe himself determined that it was proper, and the question was, so why is it sitting around for 3 months unnecessarily? The answer is, it had to be the month of Nisan.
Where are the vessels during these 3 months? The Aron.
Everything is in the storage, I guess. You know, maybe they have a tent to store it. I don't know where they put it, but it wasn't assembled.
Sorry. So the whole point of building it 3 months early is to have this drama, like, or like what? So why didn't they?
Well, I think that is the point. The point is like this: that if they would have finished, Erev Rosh Chodesh Nisan, and put it up Rosh Chodesh Nisan, then everyone would have said, of course we put up Rosh Chodesh Nisan, we just finished it, now we put it up. The whole point, if there's something to doing it in that date, if that date has a special significance, so how was that brought out? That's brought out by the fact that it could have been put up weeks before. And it was deliberately delayed to that date. That means something is special about that date. Now that's the question. What is special about Rosh Chodesh Nisan? Nisan is the month that Yitzchak Avinu was born. What does Yitzchak Avinu have to do with the Mishkan, of all the others? Like, his birth month is the month of the Mishkan. So I'd like to offer 2 possibilities, 2 suggestions. One suggestion is this, that we know from Sifrei Chasidus that the 3 of us correspond to the 3 pillars on which the world stands. The Mishnah Perkudei says, Al Shlosh Devarim Ha'olam Omei. The world stands on 3 pillars: Al Torah, Al Avodah, V'Al Gemilus Chasodim. These are the 3 reasons the world was created. But God created the world because the world would have these 3 observances. So the Sifrei Chasidus tell us, and the Maral tells us, that these correspond to the 3 of us. Avraham Avinu, of course, corresponds to Gemilus Chasodim. Right? Avram's whole life was a life of chesed, of giving, sharing, bestowing, helping. So Avram is the exemplar of Gemilus Chasodim. Yaakov Avinu corresponds to Torah. But Yaakov, the Torah tells us explicitly, he was the Ishtam Yoshev HaHolim. He dwelt in the tents of learning. That's Yaakov Avinu. It says Yitzchak corresponds to Avodah, to service of God. And the reason, of course, is because Yitzchak allowed himself to be brought as the ultimate sacrifice to the Ribono Shel Olam at the Akedah. Now we have to understand an amazing thing, and we've said this over in the past in the SHMOS, that there's support to this from the Midrashim as well, that every carbon that is ever brought in the Beis HaMikdash, has a connection to the Akedah. And we know, Chazal tell us, and the Rambam passes this way, that the place of the Mizbeach in Yerushalayim, the place where the altar stood in Yerushalayim, was the actual spot where the Akedah took place. The Akedah took place on one of the mountains in Eretz HaMoriah. The Beis HaMikdash is Har HaMoriah. So the site of the altar was the actual place where the Akedah took place. But it's deeper than that, so Shemos says. Because what is the idea of a carbon? A carbon is a symbolic self-sacrifice. It is a vicarious self-sacrifice. But when a person brings a carbon, what he really is doing is he's offering himself to God. But of course, the Baruch Hu doesn't want human sacrifice. He doesn't want us to commit suicide. So we offer ourselves to God symbolically through the offering of an animal. Right? It's not just, by the way, because an animal is an expensive thing, a valuable thing, and therefore offering an animal is considered a form of sacrifice. If that was the case, it should change with the times. Now, once upon a time, when livestock was the symbol of wealth, so you'd offer a cow, a bull, as a carbon. So nowadays, maybe you should offer a Lexus or a Mercedes. That would be the carbon, right? But it's not that way. When Mashiach comes, we'll still bring animals. Why? Because it's not the value of it. It's not because it's expensive. But there are things that are more expensive than animals. It's because an animal is the closest thing to a human being. It's a living thing. Okay? That's what it symbolizes. It's not the sacrifice of something of monetary value. It's the idea that if you're talking about a symbolic, vicarious self-sacrifice, you want to offer something which closely resembles a human being. So that's an animal. It's a living thing. When in history, what was the first time that an animal was the replacement for a human being? It was at the Akedah, right? That's what happened by the Akedah. That Avram was commanded to offer Yitzchak, and Hashem told him at the last minute, sent the Malach, said, no, don't do it. And then Avram looked up and he saw there was an ayil, there was a ram that was entangled in the bushes, and he took the ram, and it says, Vayalehu la'oila tachas beno. He brought the ram as an oila in the place of his son. And Rashi says there, Al Pi Chazal, that everything that Avram did to the ayil, everything did to the ram, he said, he ratzon, let it be Hashem's will, it should be as if I did this to Yitzchak. That when I slaughter the ram, it should be considered in God's eyes as if I slaughtered Yitzchak. And when I sprinkle the blood, as if I sprinkled the blood of Yitzchak. And when I burn the ayil, it should be as if I burnt Yitzchak. And Hashem answered that prayer. Because Chazal tell us, an amazing thing, Chazal tell us that when the Rebbeinu Shalom looks at that spot, he sees the ashes of Yitzchak. What ashes of Yitzchak? Yitzchak was burnt there, so the ram was burnt there. But that was Avram's tefillah. Avram's tefillah was that the burning of the ayil should be considered as if Yitzchak is burnt. So when God looks at that spot, he doesn't see burnt ayil, a burnt ram. He sees a burnt Yitzchak. He sees as if the sacrifice of Yitzchak was performed. That's the power of the Akedah. So this is the first place where an animal was a substitute for a human being, and that's where the Beis HaMikdash is established permanently, because that is the abode of the Beis HaMikdash. Every carbon in the Beis HaMikdash is exactly that. It is the vicarious self-sacrifice through the use of animals.
How did Avram know to do that? How did that happen? So he was told not to touch Yitzchak. But then, how did that thought occur that there is something with respect to the ram that's caught there, and this makes sense to do?
You know, my conjecture is this, that Avraham Avinu understood that when God told him the first time, offer your son, it wasn't like a joke. fooled you, right? There's something to it. There's something to it that really he was called upon to make the sacrifice, not in actuality, but in symbolic ways. So he understood that when he brings the ram, that's how he has to bring the ram. I've said many times also in the Sfas Emes, an amazing thing. The Sfas Emes says that we live in two universes, right? We live in the Olam Hamasa, we live in the universe of action. We also live in the universe of Machshava. We live in the universe of thought. Sometimes imagine you are anticipating some calamity happening. And in your thoughts, you live through that calamity. You live through it. And sometimes the thinking of it can be so real and so powerful and so vivid that it's almost the equivalent of the actual experience. Now, Rav Dessler writes in the Michtam Eliyahu an amazing thing, brings from Balei Musar, that if a person anticipates a challenge, a person anticipates a religious challenge, and he's wondering, will I be successful? Will I overcome temptation, etc.? How do you prepare for that? He says that you should try to imagine the entire experience. So you live it through the first time in the Olam HaMachshava, you live through it in the realm of thought, and that prepares you, now you're prepared to live through it in the Olam HaMasa. So the Sfas Emes says like this, think about it for a second, it's an amazing thing. It says it's true, in the Olam HaMasa, Avram never performed the Akedah. It's true, Yitzchak was spared. But in the Olam HaMachshava, in the realm of thought, how many times did he live through the Akedah on the way to Har Moriah? Think about it. It was on the way when he still thought that it was going to happen. How many times did he live through that experience of taking the knife and slaughtering Yitzchak? Probably with every step he lived through that experience. So it's true in the Olam HaMa'aseh, in the realm of action, the Akedah never took place. But in the Olam HaMachshava, in the realm of thought, the Akedah took place. But this is what's special about the Akedah. So the Akedah is really the paradigm for everything that happens in the Beis HaMikdash and in the Mishkan subsequently. All animal sacrifice really is based on the paradigm of the Akedah. And that's what the Medrash says. The Medrash says on the Pasuk that we say in Korbanos, B'shachat oso al yerach ha-mizbeach tzafon lefnei Hashem. The Chazal say that whoever says that Pasuk every day, we say it every day, is considered as if he brought himself as a carbon before the Rebbeinu Shalom. In other words, that is the idea that animal sacrifice is a vicarious self-sacrifice. And why it's related to that pasuk that we'll talk about perhaps we get the Parshas Vayikra, what is special about that particular pasuk. So therefore, if we're talking about a time which is auspicious for the building of the Mishkan, whose birth month is most appropriate for the building of the Mishkan? The birth month of Yitzchak Avinu. Because Yitzchak Avinu is what the Mishkan and the Korbanos are all about. Therefore, HaKadosh Baruch Hu said that we're going to delay the putting up of the Mishkan until the month of Nisan. So although the Mishkan was finished back in Kislev, let it sit in storage. Right? When the auspicious time comes, that's when we'll put it up. So let me share with you something personal. Funny thing, that this week, this Shabbos is the Shabbos of the Eifruf of my daughter's chassan to be. So I have to go to New York for Eifruf. Week after that is the chasna. So among the other things that a father of a kala has to do is he has to speak on various occasions. He has to speak at the Eifruf, he has to speak at the chasna, he has to speak at the Shema prophets, So you begin thinking about all sorts of things. So the thought came to me like this. This is a little personal, but I'll share it with you. That, Baruch Hashem, this is a simcha that both families have been waiting for a long time. Both the Chasna and Kala are I would say older than most people when they get married. They're both 26 years old, right? Which in our community is like considered long in the tooth, as the expression goes. So it's a very big simcha. So the thought came to mind like this. I don't know if there's any occasion I can say it, but I'll share it with you. That people try to find a shidduch for their son, try to find a shidduch for their daughter, and nothing fits. You match this girl with a number of young men, doesn't fit. You match this young man with a number of young ladies, it doesn't fit. So you begin to ask yourself, like, why doesn't it fit? why doesn't it come together? Right? This is PARSHA's Vayakel Perkudei. So you begin to suspect maybe there's something wrong. Maybe that each of them has a flaw, and it's not kasher tziva SHMOS. Maybe in their upbringing, maybe in their conduct. You begin to suspect. Your confidence begins to be shaken. And then you discover that no. That upon careful examination, you see that it's not true. That really it's kasher tziva SHMOS. It's exactly what it's supposed to be. Why doesn't it come together? Because there's a time. So see the Mishkan. Right? Everyone is wondering what's going on. We're trying to put together the Mishkan. Nothing comes together. Doesn't make sense. Right? And then they bring it to Moshe Rabbeinu, and he examines everything exactly. And he says, no, everything is perfect. Everything is exactly the way it's meant to be. So why did it hold together? Because everything has a time. In that instance, the time was Rosh Nisan. In this instance, the time is Bez Hashem when the Chasna will be. But that's the point. The point is that everything has a time. And why the time is later instead of sooner, those are the secrets of the Rebbeinu Shloim. Those are his cheshbainos. But whenever the time comes, the time comes. But in the meantime, you can't lose your confidence, your self-confidence. It's kasher tziva SHMOS Moshe. Every part was talking about kasher tziva SHMOS Moshe. To come together, that has a time. That is a separate time. I don't know if this drasha will fly, but at least I got it out of my system. Okay, so here, that's one cheshbon. One cheshbon. Why it has to be Rosh Chodesh Nisan is because the whole idea of sacrifice, the whole idea of Mishkan, corresponds to Chodesh Nisan. But there's another idea here too, which is important to understand. There is a great question in Chazal whether there would have been a building of the Mishkan if not for the Chet HaEgel. Now this is a very, very complex thing. It relates to several issues. You see, first there is a basic machlokas Rashi and the Ramban when the command to build the Mishkan was given. Rashi understands that the Parshias are out of order. That even though the Parshias of Truma and Ksava are written before the Chet HaEgel, but really Ein Muktum Mucher B'Torah, really they're not in chronological order. The command to build the Mishkan was not given until after the Chet HaEgel. The Ramban disagrees, and the Ramban says not so. The Ramban says that the Parshias are in order. The command to build the Mishkan was given before the Chet HaEgel. There would have been a Mishkan even not for a Chet HaEgel. That's the sheet of the Ramban. But Rashi says this way. Now, even though Rashi holds chronologically the Parshias were given afterward, it doesn't necessarily follow that if not for the Chet HaEgel, there would not have been a command to build the Mishkan. It may just be that it happened to have been given then, but it might have been that it would have been given even if the Chet HaEgel had not taken place. But there are Mefarshim, the Sforno does take this position. The Sforno says explicitly, if not for the Chet HaEgel, there wouldn't have been a Mishkan. And the Sforno says, because if not for the Chet HaEgel, the Shechina would have been everywhere. The world would have been on a madrega, on a level where the entire world would have been fit for the divine presence. The Chet HaEgel diminished our spiritual stature, and as a consequence, there only could be a specific place for Ashras HaShechina. This is what the Sforno says in several places. Most noteworthy in the Parshas Yisrael, but he says in other places as well.
Would there have been a Mikdash eventually?
That's a good question. That's a good question. When I came to Eretz, so would there have been? It seems from the Sforno not. From the Sforno not. Wouldn't have been even a Mikdash. Now it happens to be that the Medrash Tanchuma, which we've been discussing, the sheet of the Medrash Tanchuma is exactly like the Sforno. The Medrash Tanchuma says in many different places that the gold of the Mishkan is a kapara for the gold of the Egel. The implication is clear that the Mishkan is a consequence of the Cheta Egel. It means like this, that number one, if there would not have been a Cheta Egel, then we wouldn't have needed a Mishkan because the divine presence would have been throughout the world. But it's also something else. We see the idea that the Medrash says that the gold of the Mishkan is a kapara for the gold of the Egel, but more than that. In PARSHA Perkudei, it's called Mishkan Ha'edus. It's called the Mishkan of the testimony. And Rashi quotes the Medrash that it's Edus LiYisrael. This is a testimony. He quotes the Medrash Tanchuma, Sheviter Lehem HaKadosh Baruch Hu L'Maaseh Ha'egel. That HaKadosh Baruch Hu pardoned the Chet Ha'egel, Shori Hishra Shechinasu B'neihem, because he caused the divine presence to rest. So the Mishkan is also symbolic of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's pardoning the Chet Ha'egel. And the pardon of the Chet Ha'egel, of course, was because of the tshuva that Klal Yisrael did. Now, tshuva is a very, very interesting thing. Very interesting thing. Now, we tend to think that tshuva is a function of the midas harachamim. It's a function of God's mercy. That al pi din, al pi midas hadin, tshuva should not work. Tshuva should not work. Just because you're sorry, Hashem should forgive. Shouldn't be. And there's a truth to that. It is true that al pi strict midas hadin, according to the strict dictates of divine justice, there should be no such thing as tshuva. But the Mesilas Yesharim raises an interesting thing. He brings a pasuk. The pasuk says, "Hatzur tamim pa'alo." God is the rock; His ways are perfect. Ki chol d'rachav mishpat. All His ways are justice. All His ways are justice. Meaning, there's no such thing as God just giving in, relenting, overlooking. God runs the world with strict justice. So asks Mesilas Yesharim, if we find on the one hand that tshuva helps, how can we say that kol d'rachav mishpat, all God's ways are justice? Doesn't make sense. But how can it be, on the one hand, tshuva works, on the other hand, you can say that all God's ways are justice? So the Mesilas Yesharim says, an amazing thing, he says that tshuva, it's true, it's an element of divine mercy, but the midas hadin, the consideration of justice, does not suffer. There is a way to rationalize the effectiveness, the efficacy of tshuva, and reconcile it with considerations of justice. And he says like this, he says that...
Sorry, who are you quoting?
The Mesilas Yesharim. It says like this, that as we know that there is such a thing as hataras nidarim. A person makes a vow. So a vow is binding. If you want to release yourself, be released from the vow, you go to a Beis Din, and you go to the Beis Din and say, I made a vow, but I want to be released. So the Beis Din inquires, investigates, and asks, is there some bit of information, is there something you know now, that had you known it then, you wouldn't have made the vow? And the person says, yeah. Says, if I would have known such and such, I wouldn't have made the vow in the first place. That's called a Pesach. It's an opening. Right? Let's say a person made a vow not to drink red wine. Good, red wine, alcohol, you get drunk. And then someone shows him an article in the paper, red wine, it's good for you, antioxidants, whatever. Who knows? Would have known that, I never would have made a vow not to drink wine. So you go to the Beis Din, and the Beis Din says, is that true? That had you known this, no, I wouldn't have made the vow. So the Beis Din says, okay, that provides grounds for annulling the vow. That's called the Pesach. That gives you the court the right to say, mutalach, 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 the vow is suspended. Now what really is happening? What really is happening is that the Beis Din, in consideration of the Pesach, can say that it really was a mistake in the first place. It was a neder betos. It was a neder that was made in error. Had you had perfect information, you wouldn't have made the neder. So therefore, we look at the neder as if it wasn't made with full intention. So it's considered an erroneous neder. It was a mistaken neder. The neder lapses. So what do you see from the whole halacha of hataras nedarim? That akiras haratzain, if you uproot the will, it's as if you uproot the deed. So the Mesilas Yesharim says tshuva works the same way. A person does an act, a sinful act. He does it willingly. So now the person uproots the will. He expresses remorse. He feels bad. I wish I didn't do it. So there's an akiras haratzain. There's an uprooting of the will. So the Torah says, akiras haratzain ka'akiras hamasa. Uprooting the will to perform the action is considered an uprooting of the action. That's the chidush of tshuva. It doesn't work strictly according to considerations of justice, but it is not a contradiction to justice. Now I think that the way to understand it is with a mashal. There's a law in secular Jewish jurisprudence called the exclusionary rule. If testimony is gathered illegally, let's say an illegal wiretap, there was no search warrant, that testimony cannot be used, that evidence can't be used against a defendant. So let's say, for example, you have a drug dealer, and some overzealous policemen build a case against him using an illegal wiretap, where they search his car, his premises without a search warrant, and they gather evidence against him, and he's put on trial, and he has a good defense lawyer, and he's acquitted. You know, the evidence was gathered illegally, he's been acquitted. So you ask yourself the question, was justice done? Well, in one sense you would say that. Justice wasn't done, because this person committed criminal acts, and he's not being punished for them. But on the other hand, justice was done. Why? Because the law was properly applied. Right? There are other considerations. Right? Punishing the guilty party is not the only consideration in a system of justice. Right? Procedure is important. The procedure is fair. The procedure doesn't take advantage of the imbalance of power that the government possesses against a criminal defendant. The government has to be restrained from this type of illegal activity. There are different considerations. So now, when a person does tshuva, you're right, it's an odd thing. A person did an aveira, he's not getting punished. But within the legal system that God set up, akiras harotzon is akiras hamaisa, and therefore it satisfies the requirements of God's legal system. We know the Mekubalim tell us that Yitzchak, of all the others, Yitzchak corresponds to the Midas Hadin. Right? Avraham corresponds to the Midat Chesed. Yaakov corresponds to Tiferes, which is the balance of Chesed and Din. But Yitzchak corresponds to the Midas Hadin. This is the Mekubalim tell us. The acceptance of the tshuva of Klal Yisrael, the construction of the Mishkan, the divine presence coming to rest in the Mishkan, is in the birth month of Yitzchak, to convey this idea that this is not simply an act of divine kindness, God's acceptance of our tshuva, but it is something which satisfies even the Midas Hadin. And this is important for us to know. You see, imagine Imagine a person who gets into law school through an affirmative action program. Okay, he gets into Harvard Law School. Is that really doing him a chesed? Is that doing him a kindness? Because what does the person think? The person thinks, I don't deserve to be here. I don't deserve to be here. Why am I here? I'm here because they have racial quotas, and I belong to this disadvantaged group, and that's why I'm here. Now, maybe going to Harvard is worth suffering the indignity of getting in on a technicality. But I suspect that it's not very, very good for one's ego to feel I don't belong here. And you look around, everyone else, top of their university class, top of their high school class, they've excelled from the very outset, and they deserve to be here, and I'm here, right? I got in on a racial quota. And what do you feel like? You feel like third class, fifth class. You don't feel that you belong. Because Klal Yisrael committed the chet ego, and they did tshuva. But why does the Kodesh Baruch Hu accept our tshuva? So if a person thinks that tshuva is just okay, Kodesh Baruch Hu is a softie, so he's moichel, he forgoes. He's a mavater, he gives it. But really, we don't deserve to have a mishkan, we don't deserve to have the divine presence, and so on and so forth. That's a terrible thing to think that way. That a person should imagine that he's merely being tolerated, but not cherished, not accepted. That's something which is a very, very, very painful thing. So therefore, the Ribono Shel Olam delayed the putting up of the Mishkan till the birth month of Yitzchak. The birth month of Yitzchak stands for the Midas Hadin. That the tshuva of Klal Yisrael is not only accepted because HaKadosh Baruch Hu is a softy and he gives in, that it satisfies even the requirements of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Midas Hadin. That for Klal Yisrael could be proud of their Mishkan. That they've overcome their faults, they've overcome the chet ego, and they brought themselves to a point where al pi midas hadin, we deserve to have a mishkan, we deserve to have the divine presence dwelling among us. That's something which is very, very, very important for the Jewish people to feel. And therefore HaKadosh Baruch Hu delayed the putting up of the mishkan. That it should be in the birth month of Yitzchak Avinu. Yitzchak Avinu being the exemplar of midas hadin, that they should understand that the Mishkan and the divine presence which they've merited is not simply something which they were given as a favor, as a kindness, but rather it was something that they deserved, they earned, in accordance with the dictates of Midas Hadin. So these are two conjectures as to why the Mishkan was delayed. But again, everything has its time. Everything has its time. And it may be that we will discover the same thing. Now, we live in a time, we're waiting for the Mashiach to come to build the Beis HaMikdash. And, it may be that our own self-confidence is shaken. I mean, how bad are we that it seems that Klal Yisrael has been waiting for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, Mashiach hasn't come. What's the explanation? What are we doing wrong? Says maybe there's other considerations. Maybe there's a zman, there's a time. The time hasn't come yet. And it's not a question of whether we're deserving or not deserving. Maybe there's some lesson that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has to teach us. It has to come when it comes, because there's a significance to that time, and when that time comes, we'll understand, this is why HaKadosh Baruch Hu waited to this time. That's a conjecture, we don't know. But in that instance, that was the case. It had to wait for Rosh Chodesh Nisan. If that meant that for several months it would be in storage, so be it. Next week we'll meet PARSHA's Perkudei. The week after that, I will not be here. Right. But Bez Hashem next week will be a regular class.